I think the definition of greatness is to inspire the people next to you. It's not something that lives and dies with one person. It's how can you inspire a person to then in turn inspire another person that then inspires another person. And that's how you create something that I think lasts forever. And I think that's our challenge as people, is to figure out how our story can impact others and motivate them in a way to create their own greatness.
Welcome to the
Welcome to the 3-on-3 podcast.
Where is this guy?
I know you guys are probably wondering where Hans is because it's usually his voice that you hear at first. But if you remember from our last episode, he did say if the Pacers won the series, he no longer would be recording again. Well,
We had one job.
here we are.
All right. I guess I'll be a part of this podcast, man. This is
Oh,
this is
there he
ridiculous.
There he is.
Welcome to the 3-on-3 podcast. That's right. You're tuned in to the number one, because the Knicks had one job. Number one basketball podcast in the universe. I'm here.
You know,
Yes, I'm back with my guys, Ev, Lou. We got Christian in the background, making sure we continue to be that podcast that you hear about. Thank you guys for joining us. Great show. We got to catch up on a lot today. We will be talking about the Wolves, the Knicks, and the finals between the Indiana Pacers and OKC Thunder. But before we do all that, as we do every year, when a member of our team makes it another year on this earth, we got to shout him out. Lou's birthday was last week. So as we do on this show, we got to toast. And I'll start out. Lou, my guy, you already know, been decades deep into this. What's understood ain't got to be said. But brother, I appreciate you and everything that you do and everything that you mean to me. Been a true blessing in my life, more than you can understand and will ever know. I appreciate you. Appreciate everything that you've done and will do. And may God continue to bless you richly, brother. Toast you up. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you, cousin. Appreciate you. Respect.
Lou, you already know. Lou the thrill. Lou, you know what to do. Lou, come through. You know, when it was just me and Hans arguing sports, it was just me and Hans arguing sports. But once me and Lou started arguing sports, it was, we got to do a show about this.
Turned into a podcast.
And this turned into the podcast. So you know, I appreciate your brotherhood. It continues to grow. Happy for you. Happy birthday, sir. Many, many more to come. Wishing you all the blessings and prosperity and love for this year and many to come. Happy birthday, my boy.
Appreciate y'all, man.
Yes,
Toast,
sir.
man. Bless,
Yes,
man.
sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
it's gonna be a good show tonight. Let's get to it.
Love it. All right.
Hey,
Let's jump into the show, man. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they fell to the Thunder 4-1, man. 4-1. I, for one, did not see it coming. I thought the Wolves would put up a much greater fight. I did actually want them to win, but I thought OKC was eventually going to be the victor. But I'm not going to say that series did disappoint me a little bit. Lou, I'm going to throw it to you first. For me, I felt like, although there were other people on Minnesota's side, right, who failed to show up, I still think there should be heavy criticism on Anthony Edwards. What are you thinking, man? What did you see in terms of Minnesota?
you know, the league was prepared to crown Ant as the new face of the league. You went through round one. You got the legend of Kevin Durant out of there. Him, Devin Booker, stealing money bill. Then you go to the second round. You route the Golden State Warriors, the NBA's favorite son, the golden boy of Stephen Curry, and then Kimmy, the duo of them both. And then, you know, you make your way to to almost the promised land, right? So it was a perfect story that was getting written for Ant Edwards as they were getting ready, and as we've seen all year of who would they be crowning as the NBA's new face, and was it premature? It looks as if it was that. It has done a tremendous leap in his career. Yes, only being 23 and being able to reach where he has. Um, we know about the blockbuster trade between Minnesota Timberwolves and the New York Knicks. We saw how it has ultimately helped them get as far as they did, but realistically, as we see in Ant's game, it still fell a bit short, right? He is a great athlete, but has he reached that level of being a great basketball player? And I think that's really where the part of his game where he needs to improve over this offseason that will actually make him a problem. Can't Ant really play with his back to the basket for real. We haven't been able to see him really be able to execute on that end. When Ant is on, he's on. But when he's not, he's still not, right? Evan has talked about this in the past about when Ant hasn't been able to show up, he really doesn't show up. It's really a night and day. One of the things that Ant mentioned throughout the course of this playoffs, right? Being able to play with somebody alongside of like we affectionately like to call him White Dante, right? And being able to talk about how he's been able to help Ant read the game a bit better from a defensive perspective, right? So we at the end of the day, right, playing against a team like the OKC Thunder, which fundamentally is a great basketball team because they do all the things that we've seen other teams that have not been successful, they've been able to do it, not relying on strictly a perimeter game, not strictly relying on what they're able to do from an athletic perspective and being able to just uh, work through their depth and really just play both, as Hans hates to hear, play all three levels. But realistically, what they're doing is they're playing a complete game. And as he's continuing to grow, still hasn't reached that yet. But he's still very early in his career. But look, they've given you the keys as you wanted it. And so that heavy is the head. So there is definitely heavy criticism to put on Ant. And they asked him, how does he feel? Is he disappointed? And he's
Yeah.
mainly disappointed because he wasn't be able to bring it home for some of the veterans, right? And chiefly like Mike Connolly.
But you know
But
what
yeah,
though?
no,
As much as criticism, and I hate to jump in and interrupt you, as much criticism
no,
as he
for
got for
sure.
that
Good.
statement, I'm okay with him being that because he's young. And I'm sorry, but like this whole playing for these old heads, you should have got it done when you were in your prime. Okay, like stop riding on
Because
the
you don't know if you're going to get back. You don't
yeah
know if you're going to get back,
yeah
right?
stop riding
Think of
on the backs of these young cats. But I do want to throw it to Ev real quick, man. So
Connolly should have got it.
yeah, listen, man, listen, do it when you're in your prime, man. Like that's
No, but
just
even when they said Ant, like, yo, Ant, you don't know if you're gonna get this chance again. You're 23, we get it, right? But you don't know if you're gonna get this chance again. You need to strike when the iron is hot, and not just think it's a luxury that you're able to make it to the Western Conference Finals.
yeah. So, Ev, before I throw it to you, I will say this too. I was thoroughly disappointed in Randall too. The outing that Randall showed, I felt like he disappeared in this series. Even though he showed up against the Lakers defensively and offensively, I feel like he was more up and down, mostly down in this series. But go ahead, Ev. What were your thoughts? What did you see for the Wolves, and where you think they're going?
Well, Lou threw out a lot of points there that when you're a Minnesota team, you really have to take into consideration where you're considering where you're at, right? So you talked about, Ant's trajectory is kind of laying the old heads to rest, so to speak, right? When you have KD in the squad last year, when you have LeBron's squad this year, when you have Steph's squad this year, although it was an injured Steph squad, right? Steph's not there, and then Jimmy Butler and Draymond, right? Putting them out. I think you get a out outsized expectation of what the Timberwolves were going to be able to accomplish, but then they go up against a team like an OKC that doesn't have any holes. You end up seeing the flaws in Minnesota, right? One of the critiques with Ant has been, he's taking a lot of the same shots that he's been taking since UGA. He just he makes them now, but they're difficult shots. I think it falls into the offensive scheme that they have in Minnesota. They're at their best when they're able to rely on their defense to force turnovers and make up for an inconsistent offense. And you ran into that when you're talking about who their second best player was, Julius Randle. I root for him. I gave him all the praise I could during the first two series when he was the best version of himself. But he fell back into the version of himself that we've seen over the past few postseasons. So when you're looking at that, you kind of have to start there. Okay, well, your number 2 player was Karl Anthony Towns. You turned that into Julius Randle, and now Julius Randle is sitting on a player option for next year. You can extend him, or he can pick up that option, and this is your last year with him. Well, do you think that is the type of player that you want alongside Ant for the next 4 or 5 years? That's a tough question for Minnesota to answer, especially when, he's making $30 million now. He's going to expect at least that in an extension. So $30 million for 4 years towards Julius Randle, is that what Minnesota wants to go with? You talk about White Dante. White Dante expressed, I won't say his frustration, but he did express that, when he was with the Knicks, it was very clear when and how his shots were coming. He never got into that clear, consistent rhythm with Minnesota, and that messed him up. You have a player like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, has an out-of-body experience for one game, but are you extending him, to pay significant dollars to somebody who's more likely than not the player that you saw when he was putting up 20-something a game in one playoff game? So Minnesota's got a lot of questions from a personnel standpoint. There's little sprinkles of rumors out there that there may be some KD interest to pair up with Ant. You got to ask yourself: is this age, this version of KD, somebody that's going to move the needle? And the last thing that I think Lou pointed out, that if you're Minnesota, you don't want to think about it, but you really have to. Yeah, Ant's 23 years old. He's gonna be in position again in his career to try to compete for championships. But will it always be in Minnesota? That's the clock that's gonna start ticking. That small market team, you don't want to worry about it, but it always comes. That check always comes due at some point.
Yeah, that cold weather will wear you down eventually, man. But that's just my take on it. But yeah. So the Wolves do have a lot of
ain't no Prince to keep you out there.
yeah. The Wolves do have a lot of questions that have to be answered, and I guess we'll see during this offseason if they make any moves. But let's move on to the East Coast, to the main matchup, man. As F shakes his head, the New York Knickerbockers, they fall 4-2 to the Indiana freaking Pacers, man. The Indiana Pacers. What the hell is for shit? So after a valiant effort, they fall short. Before I let Ev share his thoughts on it first, I'd like to share my thoughts real quick. I will say this. There's not many instances.
I'm glad to have you back to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm back. There's not many instances I can remember where I can say that a team lost the series in the first game. I felt like, for me, the Knicks because in my eyes, they won that first game. They just they dropped the ball and let Indiana come back and win that game. I feel like that was a dagger. That was something that just changed the whole trajectory of things, and it made it hard for them to recover. The series was no longer, it wasn't in their control. The odds were changing. It was just, yeah. But that's just me. That's my view on it. I know hindsight 2020, right? But I was feeling that, man. After that first game, it's just like, man, how do you recover from that? How do you recover from that?
I'll tell you no way, Hans. Specifically, when that shot hit that bounce,
yeah, that
and then went in.
Shot.
Exactly. That's when you're like, oh yeah, it's choppers.
And then the dude hit 6 threes in a row. Like, how do you? Yeah, but we don't want to relive that. This is
Hitting
men's
the
mental
Reggie
health.
Miller.
I feel like y'all do
Hitting
want
the
to relive it.
Reggie.
Like,
Yeah, he
Oh
did the
my
Reggie
gosh.
prematurely though, and I hate that dude, man. He's a selly like, yo, never mind. I can tell he ain't play street
What the
ball.
hell?
You could tell he ain't play street ball. You could tell he grew up AAU because in the streets you'd never do that. You never, because you got to be able to fight to do that. But anyway, before we get into it, your thoughts, man. How are you feeling right here, man? It's a safe space. We're gonna make it a safe space for a moment, for just one moment for you. Give you a safe space, man. How are you feeling as a Knicks fan right now, man?
well, I'll start off with saying that I don't believe you for a second. I don't believe this space is safe, but I
Okay,
will
fair, fair,
traverse
fair.
through these waters either way. I, being 3 days removed from it, I think I'm in a much more level-headed place. It's kind of serendipitous,
Because it was
fortunate
quiet in
for
that
me
chat, man.
that we
Go
did
ahead.
not record last week because went through the full emotions in this series. When you lose a game in the way that we lost game one, for a fan base that has had a lot of tough losses in the year, like that's top 10, top 5 level,
I'm about to say, Todd, that might be
unbelievable.
top 5, bro.
But I mean, from New York moments, there's been so many moments that you just like, this is actually happening that way. That was one of those games. And what you said, which was so damning, so to speak, about that game, is that this series was close enough that we could beat that team 4 times. It wasn't close enough that we could beat that team 5 times. And
Yes,
essentially, when you
that's
lose that
exactly
type
it.
of game, you now have to beat them 5 out of 7.
5
Yeah.
times.
Right.
Mhm.
And so as we went through the series, I think what happened with this series is that the team with the fewer question marks won. Indiana clearly knows who they were. And I talked about it the first 2 rounds of the series with the Knicks. We were discovering and unlocking who we could be as the playoffs went. But we just did not have the consistency in who we were to pull out this series. When you're, all the critiques of Tibbs, and we're gonna get there. When you're discovering your bench in the playoffs, when you're
Man,
discovering rotations in the playoffs, right?
Man.
Like
I'm reliving it,
those
man. I'm
aren't,
reliving it.
Because
yeah,
I
those
wanted
aren't situations that
those are
are
questions that need
sustainable.
answers.
So that's the thing. You don't ask those questions of championship caliber teams when you have role players that we traded a lot of picks for, right? That
5.
disappear in pivotal games. You don't have those issues with championship teams.
I
When
forgot who Landry
you
Shamet was. That he was in the
listen,
league
right,
still.
Bro,
and
DeLon Wright. I forgot
shout
he was
out to
in the
those
league too.
two. Shout out to those two, right?
Because they showed up.
They showed up. But
OG.
when the first time you're giving them an opportunity to show up is out of desperation, you're not operating at championship level. Uh, when you unlock offensive riddles with your center, and then you don't run any of those plays
Riddles
that
is
you
such
unlock
a
in
apropos
closeout
word.
games. I
Oh
mean,
my
there
gosh.
was so much going on in that series, and all the questions were coming from the Knicks, while the Pacers knew exactly who they were. Right? When you know
That's
a
a
team's going to
foul.
score and then immediately take the ball out and try to get down and get easy buckets, and you allow it to happen
Every
time and
single
time
time.
again,
Yeah.
right? It's like, why is this happening? So you can't stack all of those questions up on top of each other and expect to win a series. And unfortunately,
Man,
that's what happened. The sad part
man.
about it is this Knicks team was incredibly healthy this year and in these playoffs. right?
Crazy
And
Yo,
though. Crazy.
despite having our top 7 players healthy, we did not make it to the finals. And so if you're a Knicks fan, you're both celebrating, hey, this was fun. I'm not gonna lie. This was a fun 6 weeks for us, right? This is the furthest we've been in 25 years. You can
Yeah.
hold your head up high about that. But at the same token, you're looking at it like we really let an opportunity get away, especially, defeating the defending champs, uh, the number 1 seed getting knocked out. We let a golden opportunity get away.
and you were supposed to get your
Kind of
get back from last year
we
playing
were
Indiana.
supposed to get our get
Yeah.
back.
You were supposed to get your get back.
Yeah,
You're
man.
right.
You supposed to
You're
get your
right.
get back. But you know what I mean, like, yo, you got guys out there. Like, come on, like,
Listen, I'm not. I will still stand here and defend Cat. When you get
he lack on some defensive assignments, which was
oh, absolutely,
questionable, man.
absolutely, and there's some stories
Oh
out
my
about that.
gosh.
Because
Frustratingly so.
every bucket that Obi Toppin got was
Frustratingly
personal.
so.
Every bucket that Obi Toppin got was personal against y'all. He's
You know
like,
what
yeah,
was
y'all want to let me
you
go?
know what was
Hold this.
particularly frustrating was them not having their identity, right? Like, because I'm gonna still keep that narrative because that's what it was. You
Mhm.
saw that it led to them shooting themselves in the foot
Yeah.
because when a team has their identity, right, and they have a play or a mismatch that's working, right? Once the
Mhm.
other team figures that out, they know what their next move is. You feel me? They
Exactly.
they
You're
know
gonna be
where the
just
counter is and where to go. And what kept happening over and over with the Knicks is when they found a groove, when they found a momentum, and the Pacers countered,
mhm,
the Knicks would flail. They don't know what to do. They'd go back to what Ev would say would be cheesing or spamming that Brunson pick and roll, the Brunson
mhm.
heroics, and that's only going to get you so far. Because I did see flashes, and as much as I've been a Cat critic, you get what I'm saying? As much as I've been a Cat critic, he showed up in this series. In my eyes, this series, to me, if anything, despite the Knicks losing, it validated that they won that trade to me. Because I know in my head I was saying like,
And
hey, between the Randall and the Cat trade, they both made it to the same. Like this series, even though the Knicks lost,
mm,
the Knicks won that trade in my eyes because Cat
it was
showed
a
up.
20-point fourth quarter.
Cat showed up and he made a difference and he made the Pacers feel them, unlike he did in the previous series, right? In this playoffs. And he
Of
showed up.
course.
Yes, Cat has his deficiencies in defense, but that's always been Cat, right? That's always
Yep.
been Cat. Yes, he's gonna give you these unnecessary fouls, but that's always been Cat, right? Since his been in career, that hasn't changed. But him
Mhm.
showing up offensively and making these Pacers feeling and exploiting these mismatches, I applauded him for that and showing up. But time and time again, it's like they would get a groove, Pacers would counter, Knicks would be like, "Oh, what do we do now?" Like,
Yeah. And realistically, not to, I mean, post game when he Siakam, right? When he lost in game three, like what made it, what was the issue? And it's like, well, they play harder than we did. And what do you mean by that? Like, no, they play harder than we did, but there are moments of that where you were able to see that New York did that. But overall, right, and as we talked about the second half post All Star, what Indiana was able to do from a defensive perspective, right, and how well they were able to play and being a top team on that end, they play harder, right. But even something else, and Evan, this is or Hans, I mean, a question for you in terms of New York. What is to be said about those stretches when Brunson was on the bench? And New York seemed to have a groove, right? So, is there something to that? Is there something that
there's a
we're
lot to that.
you're
I,
talking about? No, I'm
um,
saying in terms of like this identity aspect and so on. So, what do you guys think about this when Brunson's on the floor and they're able to be able to go on these stretches? What does that necessarily mean for New York, and why were they able to do so and do so effectively against Indiana?
I'll tell you exactly what I think it was, and I'm gonna start with Mikal Bridges observations. I won't call it criticism. I'll call it observations.
Look at these
I
professional
think
words.
you know how. Okay, here we go. This is the example I'll use. You know how you have a group of friends, like your guys, right? And no matter who you are, when you go out in this world and you act around other people, when you link up with your guys, you're a certain role with your guys, right? Like you
Mhm.
may be loud and outspoken with everybody else, but if you're the quiet one in your group, when you link back up with your guys, you're back to being the quiet one in your group, right?
Mhm, mhm.
I think Jalen Brunson is clearly the leader of that Villanova group, and Mikhail is a role player in that friend group. So when he's out there with Jalen, he doesn't know how to be the best version of himself. He
Mm-mm.
knows how to be the feeling guy. So when Jalen is off the court, that's the only time Mikhail mentally is able to get himself to being the I got this guy.
Mhm.
And that's what we ran into time and time again
But
with Jalen.
and that's what I was gonna say. To me, that's a detriment to Jalen Brunson. He, to me, and we'll get into it on the next topic that we're rolling into. I'll say this: I don't know if it's a detriment to Jalen Brunson or how the X's and O's are drawn up by the coach who's running it on the floor right then and there, right? Because what I see is when he's off the court, it's guys playing basketball. Basketball is simple. Like as much as we like to overcomplicate it, when you get
Mhm.
in there in between the lines, certain aspects, certain fundamentals are simple. When you have the big with the mismatch, you know where to spread the court, you know where the dunker
Yep.
spot is, you know when to cut. Like certain things are instinctive, especially if you're a team who've been playing with each other all season. Like certain flows you
Yep.
just know. But I also understand that Brunson is a special player, and you do have to allot the special player the time on the ball to do what he does, to be the maestro, to be the magician, but at what detriment, right? At what cost?
Yeah.
So I think there
Yep.
needs to be a balance of that. But at the same time, right? Like, how much is that? I guess for me, my question is, and we'll find out the answer eventually because the Knicks are going to have a new coach, which is a topic of rolling to. As I often wonder, how much of that is Tibbs and how much of that is Brunson? But we'll get into that. Breaking news if you haven't heard it, New York Knicks have parted ways with Tibbs. Tibbs, who has been there for 5 seasons, and 5
5 seasons.
seasons, led them to the conference finals, which they
Four.
haven't been since 2000,
Yeah.
the year 2000 when they lost to the Pacers
2000.
again,
Yep.
revisionist
Yep.
series.
Yep.
You know, you fire a guy who's really been improving you guys, taking you to the playoffs multiple years, taking you the farthest you have been in 25
Four to five.
years.
Back-to-back 50-game winning seasons.
What's going on in New York, man? What's happening?
Well, everything that we're talking about right now is part of it. You have this roster that was put together with championship aspirations. You got a healthy year out of, you came into the playoffs 100% healthy. So you had all the chips at your disposal, and you weren't able to get this team into the NBA finals. And windows are fickle, right? We don't know if this is the only year that we get this team in this iteration at this level of health. But all the questions that appeared in this conference finals, consistency of rotation, consistency of intensity, both offensive and defensively, consistency of scheme. What you were talking about just there, you have Carl Anthony Towns have a dominant game 5 that he has off of pick and roll, get him the ball at the top of the key, and he's driving downhill directly into the basket. And then you completely go away from that to game 6 to let's try to get him the ball directly in the post, but the spacing isn't there when you run it, and you don't run the pick and pop play that was dominant in game 5 one time to where he gets the ball at the top of the key and goes downhill. Everything shifts. It's the inconsistencies in areas like that, the inability to get Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby consistently going offensively, right? So many questions that kept us from getting past the Indiana Pacers into the finals. You got to look at it. I didn't even bring up the rotations, right? And then the minutes played by these players. You look at all that, and it's valid to question. Okay, you had every opportunity to get it done this season. Tibbs. Yes, we appreciate that you got us to the highest level of success that we've had in a long time, in a quarter century. But two things can be true, right? Did you get us as far as we should have went? And I give Leon Rose, the president of Worldwide West, credit. They haven't missed on a decision that they've made since they've taken over, and they've made tough decisions time and time again. So if they looked at it, did the analysis, and said, look, for what we have now, we should be championship level, and there's some tweaking there from a coaching standpoint that could get us there. We got to make this decision now. I can't fault them for that, although it's a tough one to see.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that this series specifically exposed Tibbs' weakness on offense as a coach. And is Larry Brown, when they won it in 2004 with the Pistons, is he the last defensive minded coach to win a chip?
Well, I mean, I think I understand what you're trying to say, what you're saying, not trying to say, but I mean, I think you're underselling Greg Popovich highly by.
He's a defensive minded coach?
I mean, I think he's a both sided minded coach,
But that's
but
what
I
I'm
get I
saying.
get what you're
He's
I
a
get
both
what you're
sided. So
saying.
like coaches are known for like their savantness or prowess on one side more than the other, right? They're typically balanced. Pop has always been, to me, making a great system, right? He always has a great system on both sides of the ball, having a great system, right? D'Antoni, offensive juggernaut. You get what I'm saying? Like the way he's able to do that. So I guess I'm thinking like for coaches who've been, because I even think of like Van Gundy, right? The last, like he was a very defensive minded coach, but often fell short in the playoffs. So I wonder if this is kind of Tibbs's hallmark, or is this a category where we're eventually going to put Tibbs in, and that as great as he is defensively as a coach, he's going to need to have like great offensive minded assistant coaches or a team to make up for what he may lack, offensively to do that.
Well, I think you're exactly right from the standpoint of this team had an entire season to firm up its offensive identity, to get the best version of all of its players. Even the pick and roll combination that was deadly the first half of the season fell down the middle of the pack the second half of the season,
Bro,
right?
it was
So
nearly non-existence for
exactly.
stretches.
Yeah, and it was kind of non-existent in the playoffs, right? So when you have, we saw flashes, or even more than flashes of what OG could be, but it was, every other game-ish. We've seen what Mikal can be, but it was fleeting, right? You have these pieces, and I think you just look at it and say, hey, we should have had the best offense in the league, but we one of the best offenses in the league, right? But we weren't unable to do it consistently, and the defensive intensity wasn't there as it should be.
So where I probably would disagree with you here is when Boston winning the championship. I think they won the championship because they were the better defensive team, right? They already had the foundation as a great defensive team with Ime as a coach. Missoula assumed the role. Yes, you do have the great offense, but also ultimately them winning. Also, then the factor that there was also defense.
No, that's not
When
your
Milwaukee won,
you're conflating, I would say, the two. Now, Milwaukee's the one I forgot. Budenholzer, who's
I was
known
about
to
to
be
say,
more of
yeah.
a defensive end. I can't give you the Boston one because Email fell short. He's mostly defensive. Missoula is actually a little more offensive minded because he talks about winning each quarter and the momentum. So he's definitely focused on that. Their 3% went up with Missoula. They shot more threes. So
No, I
he's
agree.
definitely
I
way
agree.
more. His coaching focus is way more offensive.
He,
I would
my argument
say
is if it did Missoula or Ime the next season, that if Ime was there, they would have won the chip. Like,
I disagree.
Missoula, but just like I look at it, like I look at when
I
Steve Kerr and
disagree.
Mark Jackson, the Warriors were built on a defensive foundation. And then what Kerr was able to do then off that defensive foundation and get that offensive aspect to the next level, yeah, then they won the chip. But it's not without having that defensive foundation.
Right. But
So
I
I,
guess
I
what I'm
I can't say that we're moving towards the fact that where it's like, oh, you're categorically like, yeah, oh, if you're more offensive teams are going to be the ones that are going to win the chip.
no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is as a coach, you need to be a little more balanced. And that's my critique against Tibbs. Tibbs, I
Mm,
think the critique is going to be that he's not
defense
balanced.
first. Yeah,
Yes,
he's
he's
defense first.
not. And there's nothing wrong with being defense first. It's just like he doesn't have enough offensive scheming or creativity offensively, right? He doesn't react enough in game offensively to get his team to the next level. I would say would be the criticism because for me, like, I'm sorry, but bro, like I don't know, bro. Like, how do you certain things that I'm seeing and I'm not a basketball savant, it's just clear. Like, you have to grow through this, you have to go through times. Like, we see this. Like, why are you as a coach offensively not seeing this? You get what I mean? And why is it taking so long? Why is it like, why aren't you, which I know it's too late to be doing it at the end of the season, but why don't you tell Brunson to come off the ball more? Move, you get what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, for me, I feel like as great as a coach as he is, I don't see him getting to that championship level unless he does what other coaches are and hire for your weaknesses. Hire for your weaknesses, bro. If you know you have spots offensively, hire for your weaknesses. That's just what it is. For
I
me,
think
that's what
the
I'm seeing.
I think the crazy part about that is even with what you said, if he would have gotten the consistent defensive effort out of this roster, one, we would be in the finals. Two, he would still be the coach of this team. It's not having the offensive everything you said offensively, I 100% agree with, but it's not having that and failing to get the defense to the level that is your calling card, to get it there consistently when there
So
were glimpses there. That's what
he didn't do his calling card to his potential as well. Is what you're saying.
that's at
Yeah,
the end of
He didn't reach
that
his
Cat,
was
potential
Cat,
with the
Cat,
okay.
Cat got him fired again. Cat was like, you know what? I'm
The
tired of
cat got him
Tibbs.
fired
I was
again, yo.
tired of him in Minnesota.
Yo, he
I'm
said, "Get
tired of
out
him
of
in
here."
New York.
It's not
No
Jimmy,
matter
it's
where you
cat.
had me with this guy, get him out of here. Get him out of here.
I'm
well,
done,
the reports
yo.
came out, as soon as season
It's
ends, they
just,
start writing the autopsy of the teams. The reports came
yeah.
out that there were frustrations about Cat's unwillingness to pick up the defensive assignments. He would go off on his own at
But it's not, but
times,
that's true. It's
and
nothing new. We knew this.
yeah,
Was
yeah,
that not
yeah.
frustrating you
It's
when
nothing new.
he
But like
would
I
miss
said
a
that,
rotation and be in no man's lane in the paint, and then they would dunk, and he'd just be like,
It
I'm
would
like, yo,
yeah.
it
Or
wouldn't
he's coming
it
under
would
the screen
frustrate me
instead of going
more.
over
Wait,
and they have an open
there's some
three.
truth to this. I think Cat really did get Tibbs fired because I think it really came down to the Knicks front office saying it's either Cat or Tibbs, and they just got Cat last year or this year.
yeah.
I think they decided we're gonna keep Cat and just find a new coach. But whether that's right
Hey,
or
look,
wrong, that's a
I,
different
w-
discussion.
Well, hold on,
I wish
Lucas,
it,
because
I wish nothing
I'm
good for
glad
James
Christian
Dolan
popped
because
in.
he's a
I'm
terrible
glad
owner.
I'm
So
glad Christian popped in because I know he saw the stat in Game 5 when it said that Brunson and Cat was the first duo to both average 25 a game in the series through 5 games of a conference finals since Shaq and Kobe. And it's only happened 3 times. Shaq and Kobe, Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, and Brunson and Cat. And I say that to say to what Christian just said, you have a duo that there's a prism that you can look through and say, this duo can be dominant. Everything else around it has to work. And if everything else around it is not working with this roster that they've put together, there is no other change they can make than finding a coach that can make these pieces work to a championship level.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with the Knicks. They have some coaching decisions to make. I think it'll be interesting. I will.
You tips as a former coach of mine.
I will not be able to get that narrative out my head now that Cat got tips fired. Thank you for that, Lou. All right, y'all. Let's move it on. Let's move it on to the finals, man. As much as some of us don't want to discuss it, we're gonna have an OKC Thunder versus Indiana Pacers finals. I got OKC in 3. What you guys got? What you guys got? I'll say this though, real quick,
I
before you
told
guys
you.
go.
Nah, I'm about to say because you already
I'll
know
s-
where I'm going with it.
I'll say this: the Indiana Pacers are a great value version of the OKC Thunder. So
I'm glad you. Thank you. Thank you.
that's what it is. They're a great value version of the OKC Thunder.
Frozen corn and broccoli. Keep it going. Tim.
Hey man, when you struggling, those things be hitting. You
Hey,
get what I mean?
come
When
on
your
now.
pocket's
Come on now.
slim, that great value be coming in the clutch, okay? Equate me,
When
okay? Listen.
you get a chance for
But
that name brand, go.
listen, man, I don't want to say too much. They're not sponsoring us. Throw some money our way. We'll put the name out there. But I will say that I do think that they are kind of the same. So as much as I'm not happy with Indiana being there, I do think that I'm going to enjoy this finals. I still think it's overwhelmingly OKC's finals to lose. It just goes. I think we'll have to see by what the margins are. But I'm putting my prediction out there. OKC in 3, but no, I think Indiana could definitely get one. I think Indiana will definitely get one, but I see it being a 4-1, 4-2 at the most. I will stand by my statements I said earlier, even though the Knicks let me down. I still think that Indiana has their shortcomings. As good as a player that Halliburton is, as good as a point guard as he's been in these playoffs, I still think he's not better than Shea. And I think that
Better
the
than
margin,
MVP.
yeah, the margin is far. And I hate to throw these cliches out there, but like when the margin is that far between, the 2 best players on the
Your two
team,
star players.
yeah, it's gonna be hard to overcome that. But what are you guys saying? What do you think? You think Indy's gonna put up a fight? Is OKC gonna, they're young. Are they gonna make this a 7-game series because they don't know any better? Because Pacers play hard, no matter what.
I'll just ask some questions. Chet versus Miles Turner.
You said Chet versus
Shea
Miles Turner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shea Gilly versus Halliburton.
Yeah, we know what you're talking
Jalen versus Nembhard.
That might be a little close.
Come on,
That
now,
might be a
stop
little
it.
close.
He skipped
He
over.
was. He was. Relax, yo.
He skipped over spin
No,
move
there's a
P.
couple. I
Siakam's
was about
one
to
spin
say.
move. Siakam.
I was about to say. So Hardenstein versus Siakam. Okay. Depending on what the lineup is, right? How they play the lineup.
I see the Pacers squeaking 1, man, 2 at the most, because they play hard.
That's
They play
Eastern
hard, and they know.
Conference. That's Eastern Conference MVP Pascal Siakam. By the way.
Yes, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. Because here's what I'll say, and I know it's harking back on the last segment. It's playing hard, right? It's cool. It's a nice cliche term
Hmm.
to use, right? But you get the most out of playing hard when you know what your purpose is and you know who you are. Does that make sense? So what we saw with the Knicks is,
I'm
yes, I'm
glad you
not gonna
brought
say
that
the
up.
Knicks were slouching out there. I feel like they were playing hard. But like Evan was saying, sometimes they didn't know who they were, what to do, what the scheme was. So you're not gonna get the most out of your effort if you don't know where to put it and how to display it. So the thing with Indiana is they play hard, they know who they are, and they're deep. They go into like what, 8 deep. They've been playing this playoff.
10
So
now.
Yes.
They unpacked Jarris Walker.
you said
Hmm.
9. So yeah,
10.
10.
Yeah,
So they're
10. They've been in 10.
yeah. So I honestly, do you guys not seeing this being in a athletic I see it being a high power kind of finals.
I think this is a
Not at
fun
all.
series. I know. I
Yeah.
think this is a fun series. I think we continue to dismiss Indiana,
Oh,
but
I will.
again, they
Even if they
are
win it, I'm like, man.
2 years into
No season 3.
identity forming run that they are, right? And they have a championship coach, and they
Mhm.
have layers to their dimensions, right? They know the levers they can pull with themselves. Now their challenge is they're still not a incredible half court team.
No.
No.
OKC, they're I
Only
mean
got one spin move,
honestly,
Siakam.
yeah, I mean, well,
Man,
OKC, SGA's ability to get his shot no matter what is probably their number one attribute. Their number two attribute is their exceptional defense, right?
yeah, thank you.
So
Their defense is
yeah,
significant.
their
This is what we talked about
defense,
before.
yeah. So what we
Significantly
have
better
is
than.
two teams that are still not getting the credit they deserve for how special they are. I think Indiana is underestimated for how good they are, but OKC maybe now is finally just getting the credit they are for how
They're just due.
absolutely elite
Absolutely.
they
But they
are.
needed to beat, once they beat Denver, I think now it's like, okay, now we can say, okay, maybe the team is what we thought they were.
But I
Because when
think
they
even
overachieved
I
3 years
think
ago.
even Denver they didn't get the credit because that went 7 games.
That went 7, yeah.
Right. It
But
was, I
no, no,
think
no, you
Minnesota
have
is
to give
now
credit.
when it's finally people are finally waking up to, oh wait, this team is, very, very good. So
Yeah. I mean,
so
look,
but I think
we're
it'll be a fun series.
last season we talked about it was just like, okay, we like what's they're a number one seed, but do we believe they're a number one seed? You know, this season it was a little bit of that lingering hangover of that because they performed like they did last year, but the pieces that they needed to add together that solidified that, the Caruso's that runs your second unit, which is also a great two-way player off at running your point. Chet being healthy, Hartenstein being the guy that you can complement him with now. Shea really continuing to be the guy that he showed you before as a previous MVP front runner and ultimately winning it this year. Can Jalen then show up in these series this year and him being able to do so when needed? Yeah, he had some games that were shaky, but ultimately better showing than last year
Better
what their
showing than
role
last
players have
year,
been able
yes.
to do. Yeah, so all their role players. When you talk about the most complete team in basketball this season, has been OKC overwhelmingly from top to bottom. And they've shown that. And they've been able to do, and what the other teams who've been playing on, whether it's analytics or not relying on the perimeter game, really being able to use and abuse you when it comes to that mid range, then being able to get to the free throw line, playing great defense and being able to kill you in transition points. And then also being able to get off on the perimeter when they have the opportunity to do so. There's really not many holes to their game, and like I say, Indiana looks like a version of them, but
Great
not as
value.
refined and not with the same amount of pieces at the same level of OKC. And these guys have done it together for a couple years now. So they when you guys have talked about locking in the identity, they've locked that in, right? So they're really, like I told y'all before, man. You guys about predictions. Whoever won that Denver series is winning the chip, and I stand on that still.
So did they only play once during the regular season with OKC winning by 6? Was that the only game I'm seeing in December?
No, they
Yeah,
had a
they only play
game
one.
I think in March where OKC blew them out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was
February,
111,
March.
132. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. 111,
Uh,
132.
but what I will say, in boxing, how they say like styles make fights, right? I do think that this is a fun series stylistically from the
Yes.
standpoint
I
that
think
you
X's
have,
and O's wise, like it's gonna
yeah,
be fun.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
enjoy watching it. Honestly, I maybe see one or two. Okay, this is what I'm hoping for. I would hope that every game is close. That's what I would hope for it to be an exciting kind of like, back and forth. But I don't know. I don't see too many blowouts.
Well, I could see both teams. I could see both teams having a blowout win in this series
You could see
from
Indy
this
having a blowout win against OKC.
simply from the standpoint
The
of
rust,
the
the rest.
way, no, not the ref, the way Indiana
What the
wins,
hell?
right?
What the
If
hell,
they,
Brandon?
I'm not saying that they'll have like they're gonna. OKC, I clearly think is gonna win this series. I wouldn't put it going past 6. I can see a game in Indiana where it's a complete snowball. They're getting the turnovers, they're getting the
I
transitions,
get
they're
it.
getting half
Minnesota did it
complete.
to them
Yeah,
last
yeah,
4
yeah,
games.
right. And they put
Yeah,
up a
yeah.
one game where they get 130, 140 points in OKC. OKC is not a lay down team, but OKC gets, they get ran out one game, and
It's
and
just
it's
like,
and
yo,
it's
fight to see
no,
another day.
yeah,
Let me
yeah,
ask you
yeah.
guys a
I could see
question.
that.
Do you guys believe these are the two best teams in the NBA?
No.
I do believe one of them is.
The
I'm
reason why
gonna
I'm
say yes.
asking is
I'm gonna say
because
yes.
the Pacers were, I think, the last 53 games or so. I
Same
might be
record as
wrong
the
about
Cavs.
that. They were 40-13.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they were one game worse than the Cavs from January 1st on. So they were this virtually the best record in the East
I'll
from
say this.
January
Before Tatum's injury, no.
on. Oh,
I'll say that.
I'll say
wow.
this. There's a reason why these two teams are in the finals. Defense wins championships.
The fewest questions. I think the fewest questions. I think as we went through this playoffs, teams with glaring questions got exposed. Teams with multiple questions
Missing Achilles,
got
got it.
exposed. Boston was on his way out before
Teams
Hey,
with
no,
before the
chill,
teams
Achilles
chill.
injury.
teams with deep
Hey, yo,
benches.
chill out, huh? He said
Teams
missing Achilles.
both
Usually that's an issue.
Teams with missing Achilles just,
And
just
teams
gotta go.
with their Achilles
both
were
teams have
down
deep
9,
benches.
about to go down 3-1. But continue.
Both teams
That's
have
true.
deep
People,
benches.
They do. They
but
both
this,
teams.
yo,
Go ahead,
probably
Lou.
the two deepest that we've seen in the league, realistically. I mean, we knew that about OKC, especially when they added those couple pieces. I I'm not gonna lie. Once they added Hartenstein, Caruso, so I'm like, bro, it's gonna be very difficult to beat these teams. Doesn't matter who it is because they are too complete. Like, literally too complete.
You know
You
what
could
I
run
love?
your first and second unit. Their second unit is better than a good amount of the
But this is
NBA
why.
teams that are currently.
But this is why I love the game, right? And this is why we do this podcast. Because as much as we're saying these statements, a couple bounces here, a couple bounces there. What are we talking about? You hear what I'm saying? So like as much as we're saying that, so like I hate to play the what if games, but right, the what if games like they throw in there, right? So like, what if the Knicks won that first game? You get what I'm saying? What if Tatum didn't do this, right? What if Denver was healthy physically? Like, like all these what ifs, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, right? You have the best teams right now facing each other. And I think we're in for a treat. although, I'm not a fan of one, but I feel like this, at the end of the day, it's going to be a really, really good matchup. And I know that some people are going to look down on it because it's small markets facing each other, right? But I still think the product is here, and I think the product is good. And one thing to say, like Lou's been saying, OKC's here. Their window is here. Like, I know we got a couple minutes left. How much more of a window we got on this OKC powerhouse right now? Because, they're going to have to start paying these players that they have in a few years. So is this kind of a situation where do we need to enjoy OKC right now while we have them?
But I think
the Battle of Tornado Alley. That's what it is.
Indiana's a little right of Tornado Alley, but I
I can't
see where you're
stand
going.
Christianity.
Battle of the corn.
stand
Battle of the cornfields.
Yeah, maybe.
This
Yeah.
is about,
The bread
oh my
basket.
gosh.
Yeah, Battle of the Bread Basket, maybe.
Taven, it's been a bread basket type of playoffs. I think the AT&T commercial, although I'm so tired of seeing it, kind of has it right. I
2
think
years in a row.
this year has answered OKC's questions from the standpoint of, is Shea, J-Dub, and Chet a certifiable big three that we can build around? You talk
you
about
cursed them. You know
OK's,
how Christian hates that.
it's all good. It's all good. You talk about all the picks that they have,
What the
right?
fuck you say?
And the story has
The
been
big
huge.
three,
The story has been how, them cashing these picks into and maybe packaging one of the players into another superstar or whatnot. I think that they're in a position, if they want to go the route of, you can pay these three and you have enough picks that you can fill in all the other positions with a skill set type, right? So yeah, Lou Dort
Shorten their
may not
bench.
be on this team for 3 more years, right? But Case and Wallace will still be there. Once Case and Wallace, prices himself out performance wise, you got enough picks that you can, find the next version of him. Caruso may not be on this team for 4 years, right? But you got enough picks that you can convert into a version of him. So you have enough equity that you can use to cash into the types of players that you need around those three for a few years to come with the picks that they have. So I think this is just the beginning of what we're going to see for
but
OKC.
I don't know if you're going to say something, Lou, but I was going to say that they're going to lose somebody like a J-Dub or a Hartenstein type of player, I think, if they don't want to pay.
That's my point. You
Not
could
if
pay
they
the
start to
three.
win, though.
You could pay the
Yeah.
three and replace everybody else.
Yeah, you're gonna have to shorten. You're gonna have to shorten your bench.
Now if you start to win, some guys start thinking about, you know what?
No, that's what I'm saying. Or you do the Golden
That
State,
playoff bonus
which is
is
like,
okay.
it doesn't matter. We're gonna pay as long as we're winning. But we're also
Yeah.
seeing they're paying the repercussions of that, right? So I get what I'm saying. You have enough equity, right? But sometimes when they outperform and salaries have been inflating, that those picks may not draw the equity in which you think they have. The value may not be,
Agreed.
may not be in there. You have so.
Look, for instance, a perfect example of what happened with New York, right? Performed well and then, skedaddle. So we'll see. I mean, realistically, I think of the three of those guys, Jay Will. If I have to choose two of the three that I'm keeping Shea Gilly and I'm keeping Chet.
Yeah.
I think you can find another Jay Will. Shoot, you already have one on the team. But point is like for this year, that's next year's problem, right? You guys are going in to go and get your 4, get your hardware, and keep it rolling, man. And with that, OKC in 4.
Got it. All right, fellas, you heard it here. Ev, did you want to put your prediction, or are you just gonna watch it?
OKC in 5.
In 5, got it. I stand by my OKC in 3. Fight me. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all joining us. As always, please check us out on our socials. Check us out on YouTube. Interact with us. We appreciate you guys being here. We'll see you guys next week. Peace. What's up, guys? Thank you for listening to the 3 on 3 podcast. Please be sure to give the episode a thumbs up if you loved it. Hit that subscribe button, and last but not least, hit that bell so that way you're notified every time we drop a new episode. Hit us up on our social media, guys. You can find us at the 3 on 3 podcast on IG and Twitter. If you want to give us any ideas or suggestions, shoot us an email at the 3 on 3 podcast @gmail.com. We appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. See you guys next time.